Hello and blessings, my beautiful souls. So today I'd like to talk to you about the mistakes that can be made within the realm of witchcraft. When you are a beginner or just starting your practice or sort of in the medium phase of your witch's practice, there are some things that you could be doing right now that I would like to help you out with to sort of swap it around. Now, this video was inspired by Ella Harrison, something like 5 mistakes that beginner witches tend to do. It was something like that. So just a big thank you to Ella. I've been thinking about this for a couple of days now and just going, yeah, okay, there are some things that can really step in the way of your personal progress as you are developing your practice. Now, before I get started, I wanted to say that witchcraft is indeed a practice and it is something that you do. It is something that you engage in. It is a active, ongoing, evolving type of practice, and where you begin is not where you will end up. There are many twists and turns on the path of witchcraft, and that's the beautiful thing about it, is the more you learn, the more things call to you and pull you in different directions, and the only way to experience that calling and that pulling and that directional shift is by actively practicing, by putting into practice that which you are inspired by or that which you are actively learning. So let us begin. Right, so one of the first things that I'm going to touch on is something that Ella herself touched on, and that is the necessity to read widely. I 100% support this recommendation, and I'm going to sort of weigh in on it a little bit here. There is this propensity for beginners to niche down in the beginning, to find something that they really resonate with and they love, and then just consume. And that's, you know, that's a beautiful thing. That's a hyper-focusing issue. I'm neurodivergent, so I totally understand that. For those of us who really want to like soup up in that moment, who are a little bit neurodivergent, who just love to laser focus, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. But as you are doing that, widen your scope just a bit. For every practice that you're looking at, there is a history, there is a people, there is a culture, there might be superstitions, there might be practical instructions that come from different corners of the world, that come from old magic, old practices, old traditions. And so the wider you read, the better your understanding of that material will be, because you've come at it from a really wide scope. It's one thing to understand what to do. It's another thing to understand why you do that thing, why it is that you do that thing the way that you do it, and where that practice inherently comes from. Who were its people? Why was it invented? What need did it meet in that moment? And how can you tweak it so that the needs of a modern generation can benefit from that same practice? Because recreating spells, there's nothing inherently wrong with it. However, the energy of old spells was focused on the old world. And so the knowledge that you need to then slightly tweak those spells so that they are relevant in the modern, then you do need to do a lot of reading, and widely so. Witchcraft is such a multifaceted practice. It is, in essence, a craft. It is something that you do. You put this into practice. But reading and reading alone isn't going to do it. Reading is not practice. Reading is trying to formulate your practice. Reading is the research that is required for you to then practice what it is that you are wanting to practice. Reading helps you to identify plants. Reading helps you to understand moon phases. Reading helps you to identify specific practices, traditions, methodologies, and styles, absolutely. But understand widely, not so niched down. And it is in itself a beautiful thing. Now, reading outside of the scope of witchcraft is always a really good idea as well. There is academic material, just like Ella said in her video, anthropology, history, archaeology. They can all help you to better understand the history of a practice, right? But beyond that, I'm a big reader of fantasy. I love reading fantasy, and I love reading magical fantasy. And I've got to say, there are some incredible books out there that truly focus on magical practice, including certain lore. There is there is in existence a group, a great many authors that have bothered to do their research and that are pulling from a place of knowing, an established practice, an established tradition, an established heritage or culture or history. And that in itself is a beautiful thing. Now, I'm going to give you an example. There is a prolific pagan author by the name of Dion Fortune. She is well known for the mystical Kabbalah. Is it the mystic Kabbalah or the mystical Kabbalah? Either or. She's very well known for that book and a plethora of other materials. But she also wrote a fantasy book that is exquisite, absolutely exquisite, and it is called The Sea Priestess, if I remember correctly. In it, it depicts a ritual using the fire of Azrael. I have used the fire of Azrael during a lunar eclipse at a beach with my coven in Queensland up north, and I've got to say, amazing. Absolutely amazing. And it was because of that book that I was inspired. It was because of that book that we all became inspired to put this into practice, because the feeling that it pulls out of you. There are times where you'll be reading and what you're reading actually pulls on you. It tugs away at you and you're like, oh, I'm feeling this. I am feeling this. And that can happen in nonfiction and it can happen in fiction. So read widely, widely, lots and lots and lots. And don't hurry. It's not about speed. It's about quality over quantity. I say that to myself. I'm a very fast reader, so I say that to myself. Annotate as you go through, make notes as you go through, really absorb what it is that you are reading, really take down what inspires you and go from there, okay? So that is point number one. Point number two that I'm going to make here is you don't need all the things. You don't. In fact, put it down, take it out of your shopping trolley, put it away. You don't need it. Yes, you might really like a gorgeous, elaborate metal engraving pin for all the candle magic that you plan on doing, but you can get just as good a result using toothpicks dipped in magical oils that, by the way, you can make yourself. And so the wood absorbs the oil. So as you're carving your intention in there, you have got that magical intention, you have got the sigil or the symbolism, which is your exact writing or any other writing or sigil that you might be inscribing onto a candle along with that magical oil. And voila, you've got a potent little magical creation, a potent little candle spell, and you didn't need everything under the sun to achieve that. Learn to simplify, learn to use what you have around you. The world that you live in is quite abundant. Whether you live in a city, in an apartment, whether you live out in the country, off-grid on your own property like I do, whether you live close to areas that have big spaces for nature, nature reserves or nature spaces, parks and what have you not. There is a plethora of materials that you can gather up in nature, and learning to look for that, learning to hone in rather than looking online for the thing that might, be beautiful and that you might want to adorn your altar. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm all about aesthetics as well. But rather than doing that, where can you get it? Where can you find something that is comparative? Where can you find something that has the weight of magic to it? I have a stone on my altar that my friend, the last time she was in the UK, picked up from a sacred site, and it is a normal looking flat kind of river stone. And that thing is it's got some heat to it, it's got some weight, it's got some magic to it, and it carries with it its culture. It's been a witness to time, it's been a witness to so much, and it has absorbed so much as a result of it. So something as simple as an ordinary stone can be anything but ordinary. And so I'm asking you to look around you, to see what you have and what you can repurpose. This little bowl right here, this is my little active magical prosperity bowl. This came from the tip shop. I went into the tip shop looking for a bowl that I was going to use to do some candle work, and I found this. And in the end, I didn't end up doing the candle work, but I did end up doing this awesome bowl. And so that cost me $1. Someone didn't want it, and I found a purpose for it. Had I spent time and energy looking for something brand new, something much more ritual-esque, something much more witchy looking, I would have been out of pocket so much more. I would have waited a lot more for it, and then I would have it here, yes, and it would look beautiful, yes, but would it look any more beautiful than what I just have that cost me $1 that I found at the tip shop? Little secondhand store vibe. So be simple about what it is that you absorb. There is so much propaganda, there is so much sales around witchcraft. There is this consumptive energy about it at the moment. It's very materialistic, and there is a way of practicing witchcraft without getting sucked into that, you know, that energy of materialistic, of hoarding, of gathering, of you know, really getting out there and populating your house with all of the pretty things that we see everywhere else. Some of the most beautiful altars I have ever seen, some of the most beautiful magical spaces I have ever seen have belonged to people who have never bought a thing, and that just make and find and gather and forage and dry and prepare and then weave and then sew and do all the things. Now, I'm not saying that everybody needs to do that either. There will be a time when you see something that truly sings to you. In that case, don't let me hold you back. I'm a Taurus. I'm saying this from the point of view of someone who is extremely materialistic. I live in a tiny home. It's a struggle for me. But I can honestly say having beautiful tools doesn't necessarily help you within your practice. I have this pair of garden scissors. They're a little bit buckled now. They've been around. I bought them. They're actual garden scissors, but I've used them in the kitchen because I love the look of them. And they're beautiful, they're super aesthetic. However, I can still cut cord with a knife, and I can cut cord with an ordinary pair of scissors. And I can anoint those ordinary pairs of scissors. I can hold them in my hand and breathe a little magic into them. I am in charge of the magic that exists around me. I can breathe magic into anything. You can channel magic into anything. I have a little lens cap here. It's plastic. Plastic is probably the hardest thing. But you can anoint that and you can channel a little magic into it, and all of a sudden it's not just a plastic lens cap. It's a little something that protects your lens, but also it vibrates out a nice magical energy to keep my camera safe, to keep it secure, to make it anti-theft. You don't need all the things. You really don't. Learn to use what you have. Did you know that you can make sigil chalk from eggshells? They used to in my culture. I've made chalk out of powdered eggshell. You can also make kashkarila, which is protective, also made of eggshell. You can also use eggs to cleanse your body using the swiping method. None of this costs a lot of money. In fact, if you have chickens, you're halfway there. If not, then eggs at a supermarket have so many different applications and purposes. And it's incredible. It's incredible how little eggs are used, unless it's Ostara. Unless it's the neo-pagan festival of Ostara, then you're going to see a lot of eggs. Easter time, you're going to see a lot of eggs. But actual folk magical practices, especially diasporic in nature, I should say, really use gorgeous amounts of eggs. We use food, cooked food, to honor the gods. We use alcohol, we use tobacco, we use fresh herbs. There is this thing in magic where the essence of magic exists in a great many different forms and a great many different things. I find plastic devoid of it. Metals, not so much, but plastics, yeah. And it is my responsibility to charge my tools and to use ingredients that have a life force in and of themselves. So I use a lot of dried herbs, yes, in my practice, but I also grow my own fresh herbs. I'm blessed with the space to be able to do that. Not everybody is. But going to your supermarket and buying fresh mint, fresh rosemary, fresh thyme will afford you the same energy. It will afford you the same amount of life force, living energy in the plant. Fresh herbs are amazing for magic. Fresh herbs are incredible to work with because they have a really, really strong natural energy to them. And these are things that you can pluck out of the earth. You do not have to go out and consume and acquire and be obsessive about all this thing. I need this crystal, I need this chalice, I need this statue, I need this thing, I need this thing. It's always one thing after another after another. Slow it down. I'm not saying don't buy what you need. I'm saying slow it down and see if you can make do without it. And if you can, then you don't really need it. And if you can't, see if you can get it in a totally different way. See if you can make it. See if you can find somebody else that can make it, you know, and go from there. Just be really intentional. Just be really, really intentional with what it is that you choose to bring into your practice, and ask yourself this: does it have power to it? Or does it only have the beauty that I see? There's a lot of power and beauty as well. The aesthetics, they matter, they really do. But you don't need to buy everything to make it look aesthetic. Witchcraft is so natural in its energy. It's so natural in how it appears in your life. You're playing with natural energy, you're playing with earth energy, you're playing with spirit energy. So just be very careful with what it is that you choose to bring into your practice, and make sure that it aligns with your practice. Make sure that it resonates with you, that you feel a connection to it. Make sure that it breathes its own energy, its own magic. Like, it's really important. Number 3, and because this video has been much longer than I had anticipated, I'm going to say this. When it comes to experimenting with spells, they either work or they don't work, okay? You try it, you commit to it, and they either work or they don't work. And so it becomes really, really good practice to document what it is that you are working with, what magic you've just practiced. And when you do this, take down as much detail as you possibly can. What was the day? What was the moon phase? What was the season? The day will be associated to a planet, which will be associated to a god. Hour, a planet, a god. And the moon phase, the energy of push and pull. And so try to document all of that along with the ingredients that you use and the mood that you were in. Where did you get this spell from? Did you make it up yourself? Did you try it from a book? What's the history of this spell? Where does it come from? Was it somebody's made up spell, or does it have a little history in it? Is it from a grimoire? Is it from a culture? Really document your spells, and it will either work or it won't. If you've done a sigil to get yourself $5,000 and you end up with $100 in your bank account more, that's not your spell. That's a little bit of your spell. That's not your full spell in culmination, because that's not what you asked for. So that spell's not very good, is it? If you do not get what you aimed to get, then your spell wasn't successful. And this is definitely something that I feel needs to be talked about a little bit more, because I find that there's an element of delulu here. There's an element of, oh, but something did happen. But something did happen. Yeah, sure, something did happen. I'm not saying don't be grateful for the results of it, but that spell wasn't good. So you would write, actually, weak spell, did not yield exact results. And you would document it as such. And then the next time you try a money spell, don't use that one. Use another one. Really, really try to document what it is that you do. When you're engaged in magical practice, when you're out foraging, when you read a book, let's say the book doesn't resonate, then write that down. I read this book, it doesn't resonate. And keep a note of that. Keep a note of that. This is not so that you can pass it on. This is so that you don't forget and you don't waste your time. There is an awful lot of time wasted on spellcraft that just doesn't work. Spells aren't the easiest things to do, honestly. There are thousands of books of spells out there. Thousands. And yes, they came from a place or a person that used those spells and it worked for them. But you have to understand that that person has their own natal chart. They are ruled by their own magic. Their biosphere may be contributing to the success of their spell. The seasons in which they worked those spells may also be contributing to the success of that spell. their gender, their age, their energy, everything, everything, everything. What works for me isn't necessarily going to work for you. There are some things that are tried and true for everyone. Working with the elements, they are solid. They are solid. Earth, air, fire, water, and spirit, if you like. That's my water pump. But document your spells and experiment with your spells. Experiment with different ingredients. If you're going to go out of your way to substitute something, write that down. See if it makes a lick of difference. Be very experimental, but also be very intentional with how it is that you personally experiment. You are being much more intentional, much more in control. And you're not taking it the easy road. You're not kicking back going, oh, that didn't work. Okay, well, no, that didn't work. But why didn't it work? Try to figure that out for yourself. Like, did I use the wrong moon phase? Did I use the wrong day of the week? Did I use the wrong astrological hour? Did I use the wrong sigil? Did I use the wrong ingredients? And this is just a side note. Rituals are complicated, spells are not. I want you to really hear me when I say that. Rituals are complicated, spells are not. Spells are a procedure. Rituals are a procedure on a much grander scale. Rituals are designed to be complex because they are there to alter your state of consciousness. There's a step, there's a way, there's a will, there's an energy, there's a clothing, there's a fragrance, there is an altar set up, there is a lot to a ritual. This is not to say that rituals can't be simple, but a great many rituals are quite complex. Spells can be as easy as a birthday candle on top of a cake. If the intention is there, if the know-how is there, if the energy is right. Let's say you've got a cupcake and a candle. It's the right moon phase. It's the right astrological hour. It's the right day of the week. You are wearing the right colors for some reason. Like, there are times where things just align, and they align beautifully. What you want in magic is that alignment, and you want to document that alignment. It's called flow, if you want another word for it. There is this beautiful thing that happens when things are in flow, because they flow. They flow nicely. One goes into the other, that goes into the other, that goes into the other, and it's a beautiful state of flow. Everything sort of mixes well together, and all aspects of that work will resonate, will vibrate, and that will be a very successful spell when you can create that sense of flow. Likewise, if you are working on a creative project and you have that sense of flow, you're just going, doing some of your best work. Likewise, if you're in the kitchen baking something and you're in flow and everything's going really, really well, that will be a beautifully successful cake or thing that you've just baked. And so, always document your mood, how things felt, if they felt too clunky. And to the side of that, I want you to hear me when I say this, okay? I feel like I've said that a lot. There's nothing wrong with standing in your kitchen with esoteric books out, writing out what it is that you're going to do and documenting it, and it looks messy. Not all magic has to be performed on a sacred, anointed altar. Folk magic is my favorite type of magic for precisely that reason. It happens on my kitchen table, my kitchen bench, out the front. It happens in the entry points of my property. I might find a bone out in nature, and therefore it will happen out in nature as well. And that's the beautiful thing. Don't get caught up on how things should look. Get caught up on how things should feel. When I say should, you know what I'm talking about here. You know that sense of continuous flow, that energy that rises up in you. Ritual can help you to get into flow. That is why there's a lot of ceremonial practices that really help. And you can create your own rituals, and that in itself is a beautiful thing. But when it comes to magic itself, magic can be accessed without ritual if you can get your head in the game, if you know how to align, ground, center, focus, disassociate with the outside world and focus in, if you can hear and feel the presence of your spirits, if you have the awareness of when to do your work. All of that comes from knowledge, from experience, from research. Putting all of that into practice means putting everything you have learned and pushing it into a single outcome. And every time you do a spell, that is what you do. You take everything that you know and you push it into that spell to create an outcome. So the more you know, the more you experiment with, the more you understand, the more history you can establish behind you, the more experience you can gain for yourself, the better off your magic will be. And so, this was very conversational. I hope that you have enjoyed it. I could talk about this forever. I have a lot to say on it. I have a lot to say because I was taught magic coming up. I got taught by my grandmother, by my aunties, by my own mother. My grandmother was incredible with it. She was this ferocious Leo woman. And my mother is an Aries. They had very different functions. However, I was taught, and now I teach my children. And one thing that I'm trying to instill in my children is a love of the experience. And how does the experience make you feel? Whenever I stand there and I smoke cleanse my children, or I cleanse them with hydrosols, I ask them to take a deep breath, and I do this 3 times, and then they release, and I'm like, well, how do you feel? How did that make you feel? And they come back with such interesting statements because I'm forcing them to experience the magic in the moment. And that is definitely something that I would say to any beginner. Force yourself to experience the magic in the moment. If you're going to light some stick incense to perfume your home, then do so with intention. I don't personally use tea light candles and stick incense in any ritual or any magic. They, to me, are not a part of my practice, but they are a part of my life. I love a good fragrant candle. I'll use tea lights and my oil burners, and I will always light a stick incense in the morning for the aroma, for the perfume. I just love it, but they aren't present within my rituals and my magic. And that's a personal thing for me that I have developed over time, for very, very good reason. You will not catch me ever, ever, not ever, using a tea light candle in a spell. Not ever. Not ever. You will not. If you would like me to talk about that, I will on another occasion. But there are just things that you learn about your practice that you realize, oh, that doesn't work for me, or, oh, that didn't go well, even though it went well for thousands of other people. Experimentation will teach you that that's not for you. Just like certain foods aren't for you, certain music isn't for you, certain colors aren't for you, and on and on and on. Magic is the same. There are expressions of magic that don't feel as comfortable as others. Magic should feel as exciting as it does familiar and somewhat comfortable, with a slight little edge to it, a slight little smirk. And look for that magic. I'll end there. Look for that magic. All right, beautiful souls. Well, I shall talk to you again soon, hopefully, and it was delightful chatting with you. I hope I've been able to give you a little something here, and if you have any questions about anything that I mentioned in this video, you know where to leave them in the comment section below. I'm keen to hear if you have any advice on avoiding mistakes in witchcraft for beginners, okay? Help some people out by putting your thoughts forward. Okay? And with all that said and done, I'm wishing you so much love, luck, peace, and joy. Take care, and I will chat to you again soon. Mwah! Bye!